All right, welcome everyone to the very first webinar of. Is everything all right, Stefan? Yeah, okay. Very first webinar of the IBM Security Belgium and Luxembourg user group. And our user group is meant for people that would like to know the IBM security solutions better. The group is done by the tech sales within IBM Security Belgium. And that's Johan Diltjens, Stijn van Herzelen, Yves de Beer sitting next to me, and myself. So this is the first time we do this, and we took the topic of data security, and more specifically, data security with our product Guardium. So on the agenda today is we're going to start and talk about why we monitor and secure data and databases, what it means to secure databases, and then we continue with doing some live demos. So for on practical note, the session will take about 1 hour. Well, not exactly, it will take exactly 1 hour, so we'll stop at 2 o'clock. I will be monitoring the chat. The master of the presentation is in fact Yves sitting next to me. So Yves, take it away, present yourself, and let's go ahead with the webinar.
Let's kick things off, yes. So my name is Yves de Beer. As Peter mentioned, we are colleagues within the security team. And let's start by sharing the presentation. So beyond network security, how can you secure your data? Let's see. So database activity monitoring, what is it exactly? So when you're monitoring databases, there are some key requirements to a solution that we can think of. Well, you need to have visibility of the access to the data. The monitoring of a database needs to be independent of your DBAs, because in most companies, DBAs control the databases and they say everything is secure, but we want to have a solution that even monitors those accesses. And of course, as we're talking about databases, we want to do an analysis on the SQL level. It has to be real time, and in case of an incident, we want to be able to correlate it to the things that happened. And auditing events, of course, related with those incidents or with possible incidents. And a solution also needs to support forensic analysis. Now, some additional features which are not native for a DAM solution, but are recognized as part of that, is that it would be nice if you can also do access blocking, which is also known as DAMP, the prevention database user authorization reports. So you have a full report of who is accessing or who has access to your database. An additional feature can be sensitive data identification. So if you're not aware where your sensitive data might be located, it could be easy with a tool to find out. Maybe you have some credit card data stored somewhere, PII data. Dynamic data masking at the database level, meaning that maybe some persons have access to social security numbers, but if they see them, we want to mask the data on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And also very important is vulnerability management. Of course, there are other tools that are out there, but since we're close to a database, it would be nice if you can do that as well as part of the solution.
Yeah, maybe can I ask a first question, Yves?
Sure.
So when you say databases, you mean traditional databases, Oracle and DB2 and MS SQL, or?
These are the most popular and known databases, but also NoSQL databases can be monitored.
NoSQL, yeah.
Not only on-prem, but also within cloud environments. where we connect to a Streams API to gather that information. But we'll see that later on. Some have consequences. When you're monitoring cloud databases, you will only be able to see the logs. You will not be able to interfere with blocking, for example.
Okay. So it stretches beyond the traditional ones.
And
let's say.
normally, any regular database that you can think of in cloud on-premise,
Okay.
you can monitor with that. Some non-functional requirements. Of course, if you have a database, every customer says, well, there's going to have an impact on my performance. So it should be a minimal performance impact on your system itself. Like you mentioned, it needs to support lots of databases within the environment. And of course, support for large enterprises. If you have thousands of databases, well, your solution needs to be able to handle that. Now, why would you need a database activity monitoring? You can find a resemblance like a security surveillance system. Why would you need such a system? Maybe you want to install it as a security prevention. Or in case of an incident, who, what, when the incident happens. So really like a camera solution. And as an example, I got a visit by a burglar in my backyard. And we know exactly, as I install the camera, we know exactly who, what, when. Of course, the who is still a question. The police identified the guy as the guy with the black pants and a black hoodie and a backpack with a special mark on it.
Yeah, not very specific.
Yeah,
I hope Guardium can do better.
But indeed, that allows you to do something similar in case of an incident. The guy got away with my chainsaw. Now what I did, I took lesson from that. I don't store any valuable equipment anymore in that place. It's in a secure environment now with an alarm and everything like that. So you really can compare it. You just monitor, and in case of an incident, you can find the facts. So why would you need to monitor your databases? Because it contains valuable information, things like financial records, customer information if you're an online shop, credit card and other account records that are stored in your database, PII information, maybe in the healthcare patient records. That's something you want to closely monitor. Now, some of the data security concerns that customers have. So, for example, we know the DBAs and other privileged users have access to our system. How can we make sure they're not abusing their privileges? Maybe 3 failed logins. Something has been changed on a table in PeopleSoft. We want to have an alert immediately. So how can I block, for example, outsourced personnel from viewing sensitive data? Maybe some consultant comes in and says, give me a copy of production. I need to do some testing.
Typical use case.
Typical use case.
Where accidents happen.
Given a CSV file, stored somewhere on a server, and your data is out there. Maybe you had lots of acquisitions. You don't know where your sensitive data is located. And of course, how do I know if my database is patched and configured security? Your DBA will certainly tell you that it's secure, but how can you verify this automatically? And there are a lot of companies that need to produce, according to regulations, compliance reports. You can build your policies and have that as a sort of automated process. So, in our case, the IBM Guardium architecture, how does that look like? Typically, we have our database service, our application service, and what Guardium does is we have an STUB, what we call, is sort of an agent that gets plugged at the OS level. On the kernel level, it's injected, so it does not only monitor TCP traffic, but also local communication, internal communication, and it has a minimal performance impact on your system, typically 3 to 5%.
Yeah, which is, as I understood, pretty low when compared when, for example, you put on auditing of the database itself, like putting on auditing from Oracle, DB2, MS SQL. You typically lose a lot more performance than the 3 to 5%.
Indeed, your DBA probably will tell you that you can, in DB2, for example, there's a feature where you can just flag it on and have your logs. But then soon you realize that the logging takes a lot of your performance impact on your system.
Yep.
So what we have is the S tab, the tab listening on the traffic coming in. It has full visibility of the data, including local DBA access. And it's gathered in what we call appliances, either virtual or physical Guardium collectors. Of course, if we're looking at the bigger picture, you can imagine multiple sites distributed, maybe remotely connected. You can have multiple collectors. Of course, every collector has its limitations on logging and being able to monitor the number of databases. You can build this up together and also have collectors connecting to an aggregator and then reporting back to a central manager. It's all centrally managed from one place.
Sort of a multiple tier architecture, in fact. Probably necessary also when you go beyond firewalls and on the internet and stuff. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So some of the capabilities, we will not go into too much detail over here, but as you see on the left, you have your security policies, the entitlements, everything on compliance, reporting, security alerts as part of the basic solution, I would say. And then additional functionalities that are part of the product, but that you can implement. Of course, you have to be aware what you're doing because you can block and quarantine users, you can encrypt data masking. But for example, if you're really blocking connections, you have to be aware that it could be a transactional system. So you have to be careful.
Better be careful.
Yeah. But we'll show you in a demo what that could look like. So.
Yeah.
Are we still awake?
I guess so. I watched the chat, of course, but we will address that question if we have some time left after the demo, because we have planned for about 5 demos. I propose we go ahead. It's 1:45, so we're good on time, Yves.
Yeah.
1:15.
Well, we have lots of demos, so we will not be able to show you everything, as I think, but let's see how far we get. So I have here several machines. I have a machine with databases. I have the Guardium interface, as you see it over here. Let's log on. There we are. That's not important. So let's start with a basic security policy. Of course, you see here on the main dashboard the typical use cases like we explained. From there you can control, get information as well, help from the managing of your assets, your databases that are connected, your STAPs that are connected, discover and classify for sensitive information, detection, vulnerabilities, monitoring, everything is in there. So let's first start with the policies. We have security policies and we can build a basic policy. Now out of the box, you see there's a lot of templates already in there that you could use to start with.
Yeah, 46 I see.
So for example, for GDPR, of course, you will still need to make the modifications that apply to your business. Maybe you need to change something, but at least you have a template to start with.
Okay, let's start with the basic policy that you were going to.
Yeah, maybe just show you
Oh.
also what you can implement as a
Okay.
basic policy, for example. And you can have some rules in there. You see there's a few rules in there. Maybe we'll address this in another session where we're talking about really SQL injection and that kind of stuff. But you see here that you can implement cross-site scripting, true regular expressions, denial of service attacks,
SQL injection
with
I see.
alerts and everything in there. So that gives you a good base to start with.
Nice.
So what already have here is just start with the basics, a policy. And as a rule, we have 3 rules in here. The first one is, let's see what it looks like. We set a category, well, it's just a name because within Guardium, everything is seen as an object within the system. So it's just a tagging of classification of sensitive data. For this rule, there's a criteria saying that any object that resembles CC1 table name, what should we do? Just skip the logging. We will do everything is okay when you go into this database table. As a second rule, we could see, for example, the criteria. If the object is part of the sensitive objects, then we will log some mask details. Now,
Yeah. Of course. What is sensitive?
what
object?
is sensitive object?
Yeah.
And
Maybe
you-
you can make your screen a little bit larger, if you please, because it's showing up. Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that
That's,
better?
that's
Yeah.
better. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks. Yves.
So when we look at the sensitive objects, what we see in there, like I said, they're all objects. But as a member, you see I have some few members in here. And for example, credit card, credit underscore card, patient, table like patient, social security numbers, typical database tables with, as part of Joe's user ID. These you can add as members as much as you want.
And these are in fact the table names, right? Or the column
These are
names?
the table name,
Yeah.
the table names.
Yeah. Okay.
So when we see something, access to one of those sensitive objects, we want to log some details.
Yep.
And a last rule I have implemented over here is when, again, sensitive data, but in the criteria we say if our user is part of the administrators, again, there's a list of members, could be real user IDs, or in our case, for example, DB2 admin, Oracle, what is it, the system, Oracle system is in there. So
Yeah,
there's a full
system,
list of members that they come out of the box already.
Yep.
You don't have to add them yourselves, but you could add different user IDs as well. So if a database administrator accesses credit card information, what we want to do is we want to alert and we want to send a syslog information using a default message template.
Okay. Simple.
But if you want to see what else we can do, you can send off to syslog, you can send a mail as an MP, or even open a ticket. If you have a ticketing system integrated, you could also automatically launch a ticket for that.
Yeah. In the somehow larger environments, you could also send this, of course, to your SIM or your SOC, like we will, if we have the time,
Like we will do-
show
Yep.
when we're going to send events to the QRadar SIM solution.
Yeah. I don't need to install the policy, but we will see later on that we can install different policies. In this case, we will only install one at a time. You can install multiple ones, but you have to be aware
Okay.
if there might be some overlap, so you have to take care of what you're implementing. Now let's see how that works. I have here my database system.
Yeah, maybe you can also make it a
make
little
it a
bit
bit
larger. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Let's see, which user? Well, let's go with system directly. we know that table CC1 from our first rule, that should be okay. There's
Yep.
no alerts.
Because
no
we ignored
bells.
it in the policy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's try to access some patient information, one of the sensitive objects. Okay, so we see we get the information, that's fine. But let's look in our reports.
Oh, indeed, we allow it, we allow the query, but we do report on it.
We
yeah.
do report it. Well, forget the first entry that was from a test we did earlier. But now with this timestamp, we see that we get the SQL statement is coming in directly into our system.
Yep.
Nothing happened yet, but because we don't alert, we just put an entry into the syslog. Now let's do another one. Let's get some social security numbers. Maybe we'll try it a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I already set up an alert additionally that, of course, if you want to know that somebody's pulling down your database, I have an alert set if we have more than 1,000 records that are being accessed, we fire off an alert
Yeah.
as well.
That's a red flag, indeed.
Yeah. So we don't not only should see, let's do a refresh, we see our 3 entries in here, which is normal because the SQL is logged. But we can also see it in the incidents. We have an incident management system, and we see, for example, already the alert that I've set,
Mm-hmm.
that, well, it detected that it's more than 1,000 records within 5 minutes. That's not normal. So you might need to investigate that. What you could do from here is say, okay, assign the incident maybe to a new incident, and then from there on you can
You can do the follow-up.
make it, address it to a user,
Yep.
for example, assign
send
it
it
to
to
a
the
new
security
new-
team and so on.
You
Okay.
see, and then you can say, okay, where was it? Assign it to a user, and then you can open a ticket from there. You can start to drill down and make sure it's being addressed. Of course, we should see the other one as well. Yep. Part of the select statement, yeah. But that's only the alert. We didn't come to the credit card yet.
Yep. Yeah,
If you
this is
remember-
only alerting.
The third rule was that we send an alert when the system administrator, the DBA, accesses the credit card information. Let's do this right away. By the way, these are not real credit card numbers.
Okay.
So our DBA system has accessed the credit card database. What we should see here in the incident, there's a second alert coming here. No, we did that twice within.
Yeah, the most recent is on top, Eve, I think.
That's the most recent one, but we should see an alert to see if we get it into the activity report. So we see that we have accessed here again, incidents.
card.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
There we go. So you see that that's the alert with a medium severity that was logged alert on credit card access.
Yeah.
So that's the information we get out of this basic policy that we have installed. So that was for our first scenario for the basic policy with the 3 rules. Now we mentioned that it's possible to block users in case they want to access some data. So what I've did also, that's the terminate policy. Let's have a look what the rules are within this one. Now I put a category here of PCI, but that's just identification within the system.
Yeah.
And as a rule, the first rule says, rule criteria, if the database user or system, again our DBA, tries to do something, what we're going to do is we're going to put an S-gate attached onto that process. So normally the S-step just lets the communication pass through, because otherwise if it would act as a proxy all the time, it would have more
It's a
performance
bit like a
impact.
span port, like in networking, right?
Yeah,
the
but
S-step.
with this scenario, we can really say if the user is system, we attach and make it work like a proxy. We'll closely monitor that.
Okay.
And then, as a second rule, we will say, okay, if this database user is system and the object is credit card, what we want to do is we're going to terminate the connection, so that we just can prevent that the DBA is not able to access the credit card information.
Okay. So with this, we are in fact proxying. So I can imagine this also has some consequences on the level of performance then.
Yeah, but
right?
we only want to make it in certain use cases. Like you won't probably implement this for your application that accessing through transactional systems, but in this case, we know it's only the DBA and he's not constantly working on that system. So let's install this policy. Just gonna install and overwrite. There it is. We have the terminate policy. And I'm still logged on here as system. So let's see if we can access the credit card information. Boom. The communication channel has been closed. And I'm no longer have a connection. I'm no longer connected to Oracle.
Yeah.
So you see that's...
Yeah, it's an important feature of Guardium. I think it can actually stop things on the fly, runtime. This is pretty drastic, but in some cases, for some policies, you do need something like this.
And of course, it only works with on-premise databases where you have direct access within cloud instances. You will not be able to do that kind of thing.
Okay.
So, as
number three,
we talked about vulnerability assessment. Since we have our STAP installed on our databases, we have a close connection to that database, and where is it? The vulnerability assessment. We can, for example, make a new assessment builder. Already built one, but you can add, for example, a DB2 vulnerability assessment. I can add a data source. I have here a data source connection to DB2. And then from, let's apply this first. And then on this database, I can specify what kind of tests I want to do on that. You see that's a lot of databases where we can do vulnerability assessments on. And this is really focused on the database itself. So the knowledge is really gathered on the database level. And for example, for DB2, you get a full list of all possible vulnerabilities that are known to the system. And I can just select them all. Let's add those selections.
Yeah, I see a mix of CVEs, so documented vulnerabilities, let's say, but also policies like, I saw one like default account names being used and stuff. So that's also included in this.
Yeah. And then you can just say, I think that should be enough to run with. Let's see. we can get back. And then you can just run this once, and then it gets submitted into the Guardium job queue. So it will run, and we could be seeing those in maybe in a couple of minutes, the results. I did already something similar for a vulnerability assessment, the demo, which is running on our Oracle database. The tests themselves are, of course, specific to Oracle that have been attached to that. And where can I get back? And for example, we could have a look at the results of such a maybe it's a bit small to see all the details, but you see the passing score. You can see some also the vulnerability assessments through time.
Yeah, is to see if you're improving
If you're
on the level of
improving,
security
yeah.
of
So
your
if your DBA
databases.
applied some patches, I have it set up here that it runs every day. Maybe it's too much, but you can get a report through an email, and then you can look at the email and then start to address the possible exposures on that. It will say which one is failing, which one you need to address. Of course, you could say this is just a snapshot in time, but we have with Guardium this quarterly subscription where you can upload the latest known vulnerabilities that become part of the list. And then they will be taken into consideration when you upload those what do you call DBS.
Okay. So it's constantly updating, in fact, the policies and
yeah, because when you install your
scan.
system, it has a basic
config
assessment with it, but you need to update it with the latest known vulnerabilities. And that's on a quarterly basis, but if there are, in the meantime, urgently fixes, they will be available as well. So you can just upload them and they will be part of the system. So let's see if that one has resulted yet. Oh yeah.
Yep. So
it's already available. It says it's still running, so it's a partial result. So
yeah, whatever. But the idea, I get the idea. I think so. We have detailed test results. Something you probably the level of detail is probably much higher than, for example, scanners like Qualys and others that we know so well.
That's the idea, that it's really focused on the databases themselves. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
That was vulnerability management, I guess. Or do you have anything else to show on vulnerabilities?
Let's see if I can. I was looking on the discover. I think it's on the auditing. For example, like I mentioned, there's a process running every day. The vulnerability report, for example, you can really set it up as a task.
Yeah.
You can add other tasks as well. This can be a report, a query that you want to do, a security assessment. Maybe you want to have discovery of sensitive data on a regular basis. You can run this as well. It's sort of like a cron tab.
Scheduler, in fact, yeah, cron tab-like scheduler, but for Guardium tasks. Okay.
And then you can send the results to a user. Of course, my user has an email attached to that, so you can get the daily report
nice.
of your vulnerability, and then you can say, okay, at what point in time it needs to run on what basis. Okay.
All right. Number 4.
Number 4. There's
the QRadar one.
QRadar.
Yeah.
So, again, we will switch to our policies. This is the main entry point where you define the rules and everything for your system. I have to make it easy. I just named it.
So for our listeners, QRadar is our top product and the award-winning SIEM solution. And what Yves is going to show is an integration with that SIEM, so that the events that are generated by Guardium can be used and correlated by the SIEM to get to an actionable event that can be followed up then in the Security Operations Center.
So it's a basic policy called a QRadar integration. There's only one rule in here, just for demo purposes. We just call it suspicious users, sensitive objects, log violation. As a criteria, we want to trigger on database users as part of suspicious users. Again, let's see who's a member of that. Again, our system, we don't trust our DBAs. Is part of that. And if any of the objects, for example, credit card is part of the member objects in there, if that user is accessing credit card information, what are we going to do? Is we're going to alert per match, and then what we will do is we will send a leave message template. That's the log event extended format.
Yeah.
And we will send it off to syslog. Now the Guardium system has been set up that all syslog information will be sent off through our Guardium system.
To the QRadar system.
To the QRadar, sorry. Yeah. So let's install this policy. There you go. It's active. And I have here my QRadar system. In fact, what I'm running here is the community edition of QRadar, so maybe there's another session we will cover how you can set this up and play with this yourself. Of course, the community edition is limited to the number of events, but from functionality-wise, you should be able to do everything as in the other one. So let's go and to our database again. We're going to log in as system, and then we will select everything from our credit card information. We get 442 rows again.
Yep.
System user has accessed it. And
now that should be seen then in
well,
QRadar.
let's first see if the incident
all went well in Guardium.
Yeah, we also have an incident reported in Guardium that the rule suspicious users has been triggered. So normally we should see also in our QRadar system. Now there's a lot of overhead coming from the network, from the local host. So let's see if we can add a filter on there and say our log source should be IBM Guardium collector. We see a lot of information from the collector, but we don't see the alert yet. Not sure if real-time streaming will. Let's make sure.
It'll do the job.
Maybe there's some monitoring process that checks the alerts. Yeah,
Yep.
there you have it.
There you have it. Should definitely make this. Oh, okay, no, it's okay. It's a little bit bigger.
It's a bit small, but there's a lot of information happening.
Yeah.
On the Guardium and the QRadar. So In fact, this is the message that is being sent from Guardium to QRadar, and through this collector, the Guardium interface within QRadar is able to interpret that and take out the event description from the rule name.
Yeah, that's the DSM, I think, the QRadar DSM to parse it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that's, of course, that's maybe one of the other topics that we will address in one of the events coming up. We dive a bit more into QRadar, but this is an easy way how you could do the first filtering on the database level on Guardium, and then maybe send them if they're, well, you see here already the 2 entries. If it's interesting, then send it off to a SIEM solution. Of course, you could say I do everything within my SIEM solution. I monitor my databases in there.
Yeah.
That will generate too much overhead. You can do the first filtering within Guardium and then send it off to QRadar.
That's something Stijn or Johan can address whenever they talk about SIEMs and QRadar and the whole family, in fact.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe if there's interest, we can also show you a bit how it's all set up. If you want to have more details, you can always contact us for that.
Yeah. So we're doing good on time, Yves. It's 1:41, so you still have time for number 5.
Number 5, yeah.
The Redact policy.
So what we will do in this policy, again, go to our policy builder, the Redact policy. Let's see what's in there. So we mentioned that maybe a user has access to database, to a table, but certain information is not able to see or should not see. So then we can apply a mask on the data that is returned on the fly. You will not be able to see the sensitive data.
Yeah, and that's actually on the fly.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of special, I think.
It's sort of anonymization, but there are other tools that do full anonymization on your data. But this is really something you can implement if you want at the STAP level. So for this case, what is in there as a rule criteria, again, it's production users. Let's see who was part of this group, production users. We have 2 members, Joe and Joe D. Okay. And as an action, we will just log details and we will alert per match. And as a second rule, of course, if the first rule is triggered, we will need to continue with the second rule to make sure that this one is being handled. And if we look in the details on that one, is that the rule criteria says if the database user now is Joe D, not Joe, Joe is allowed to see the data, but if Joe D is looking at that, we will implement a regular expression. It's a special one which is comes with a system that will able to replace social security numbers by asterisks. If you want to look at details, you can see the like expressions, or you can implement them yourselves over here. You can do quite complicated stuff with that. And as an action, we will say redact. So implement this regular expression on the fly on the data.
So again, here I think it's Guardium in a sort of a proxy mode, because otherwise it couldn't do that.
No, couldn't do that. If you're just watching on the lines, that's too late.
Yeah, there's no super magic here. Okay.
So again, we install this policy. Like I said, you can install, now I'm installing one at a time, but you can install multiples or ones, so that's not a problem. So the policy is active, and now if I connect as Joe to my database, and I do a select from my social security numbers, I see the social security numbers, right?
Yes, that's because you're Joe and not Joe D.
Yeah.
Where does the D come from? You don't
Uh,
have to answer that. I'm just wondering.
I guess data masking, right?
Okay, data masking.
That was also on the fly.
Okay.
So let's have a look here. Jody. And
Yeah.
now when we select those social security numbers, that is correct.
Is it?
Almost scared you.
Yeah.
Of course, the table belongs to Joe.
All right.
And you see
It's masked.
the social
yeah,
security
yeah,
numbers
okay.
are nicely masked using that regular expression.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not able to see the data.
Nice.
So
Nice.
this is, it's
Masking
a nice
on the
feature,
fly.
masking on the fly. Yeah. Of course, if you want to implement this, it's if you have a lot of sensitive data, it might be a bit big of a job to implement all those regular expressions. But this is something. And if you want to learn more about these data maskings, I think there's a whole explanation here. What
How
this
to do
exactly means. For example, for Unix STAP, we see that these it will handle automatically. This was the one we used. Will automatically put the asterisk on there.
that. All right.
So I think we're doing quite good on time, right?
Yes, it's 1:45. All went well. That's one of the advantages. That's why we're on time also. This is a live event. Okay, let's. What more do we have? I think we can, of course, take questions now. I don't see
I
a
don't
lot
know.
of questions in the chat. There was one question, a question about. Are we also getting information on data which is stored on laptops, and how do we secure these laptops then more? But I can answer that. You can answer that too.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So within the Guardium portfolio, there are in fact two big categories. Let's say the one we discussed today is data protection, right? Or yeah, data protection. The other one is data encryption, which focuses specifically on encrypting of data, of course, including, I think, laptops and servers, right?
Yeah. We can
Oh,
also do file monitoring.
File monitoring is another thing.
But if you want to have monitoring databases on laptops, well, I don't know if you want to have your production running on a laptop.
Probably
maybe
not,
small
yeah.
companies do that, but they will not probably implement a DAM solution. But anywhere where you can install the STAP, can be Unix, Windows,
Yeah.
and then you can monitor the database. If you're looking at monitoring files, then there's a separate module within Guardium to monitor files and all that kind of stuff. So also we have a connector, for example, to SharePoint, if you want to have a monitoring on that level as well.
Yeah. And so we have data encryption also. So within Guardium we have data encryption. We also have Mass 360, of course, which does in fact work together with encryption mechanisms to securely store data on a laptop. But that's a different topic.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
No other questions. Please go ahead if you have questions. We still have some time to address them. And if not, we're gonna give you back some time, I think. Or did you have one more slide?
I have
Yeah,
one
you do.
more slide to share, unless there are questions coming in.
No questions coming in.
Okay, so let's. So some of the helpful data security resources that we have out there is. I get focus on my screen. Yep. So we have the IBM Security Community for Guardium, as we have for Verify Access, for threat management. We have different communities. Lots of events are announced on there. Support talks. It's an open forum where anybody can ask questions as well. And also very interesting is the IBM Security Learning Academy, which is quite a huge platform where you can have free training on IBM security products. So
Yeah.
of course, if there are any other questions, we will be happy to address them here. We will stay connected still till 2 o'clock, and then you can still post your questions in the chat. We will probably
Be back.
be back hopefully soon with some
Hopefully soon.
exciting topics on.
For example, identity. That's my thing, in fact. So thanks a lot, Yves, for your interesting stuff, your demo, and see you on the next webinar. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so thank you for watching, and see you soon.